You know it was National Pussy Eating Day the other day, right?
What? Why?
Yep.
Why isn't that an item? See, that's the shit that people want to know about, men and women.
How did I miss? When is international?
Real Freddy Brick tweeted it out.
Is that true?
National Eat Pussy Day is June 24th.
I missed that.
Wow.
0 fuck
Skipping podcast.
How are you guys doing? Sorry, I don't know why I did it.
We are very well.
I swear to God, I'm not a retard. I swear. God.
You're keeping that in.
But all evidence points to the contrary.
No, don't put it in, because I swear I barely have any friends as it is, and it's because of this podcast.
You would have more friends if people thought you were retarded.
Anyway, how are you guys doing tonight?
We're good.
All right,
Doing well.
let's just... I'm
You?
doing great. Let's just jump on in. And please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
So David Einhorn's Greenlight Capital slams its purported former head of macro in a lawsuit that it recently filed. There's a legal battle between this guy who either quit or was fired from Greenlight, and after he left, he's been telling everybody that he was the head of macro at Greenlight and also trolling David on Twitter. And David has not taken this sitting down. He's hit right back on Twitter and filed the lawsuit. So in the lawsuit that Greenlight filed, Greenlight claims that James Fishback was actually just a poor performer who was nowhere near macro trading for the hedge fund. So yeah, Freddy, what do you think as our one-time head of macro for 3 minutes?
Typically in the hedge fund world, people go out their way to not massively piss off their former employers. And this is a really interesting case of a guy who's like way out there and gone completely nuclear. In the lawsuit, there are a number of working practices that are detailed, including basically this guy being asked to do things in which he never does, really alleged poor quality of work, and this guy is kind of shooting back, being like, well, if my work sucks so much, why'd you pay me $1 million? Which, if you work for a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund, is not that much money.
It's not that much money.
So
yeah.
That's been really interesting. Other things that I found particularly amusing, he's been screenshotting pictures of his laptop in the passenger seat of his car, which is where he said he did most of his work from during the 2 hours a day he was actually working. And he's saying that his inability to produce many of the memos was because he really didn't like David's macro theses. I think he said they were deranged or conspiratorial or something, so that's why he felt it was appropriate to not actually do any work. Like, I don't know the truth here, who's in the right, who's in the wrong. What I think is really funny is this head of macro thing is just going around, and look, for what it's worth, this guy is now somebody. And whatever the truth of the matter is, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So he's gone from being someone that no one's ever heard of, that worked for, very well-known, reputable fund for a couple of years, to a somebody. And that's probably helping him get a lot more meetings, if nothing else.
It's like, yeah, it's an interesting fundraising strategy, right? If you were a mediocre / poor analyst at a well-known fund, if you just start trolling your former boss on Twitter and making outrageous claims, you're like, I was responsible for generating $1 billion in P&L, and my name is not Fraser Baring. It'd be pretty, like maybe that's actually a really good idea for how to get known and raise money.
So what do you think to my pitch to Archegos then? I generated all the P&L. I mean, this guy, he was bleeding out of his asshole most of the time. Not bad, hey?
But that includes your P&L. So I don't know, man. Like, don't advertise it.
My trading is so intense that if you work with me, you'll bleed out your asshole. German and British police are working together to ensure a safe Euro 2024 amid concerns about Serbian hooligans targeting England's opening match. Up to 40,000 England fans and 8,000 Serbia fans are expected for the high-risk match, with police preparing for possible violence. German and British police are expected to manage over 300,000 England fans in total during the tournament.
Do the sanctions on Russia preclude Russia from participating in this tournament? Because like my money would always be on the Russian hooligans.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them, I think, are actually on the front lines this year. They were like, look, you guys can wait around for 3-4 years for the Euros,
I think
there's
Russia would save its best fighters for international soccer tournaments. That's what I would do.
Other than the fact that England have been truly disappointing thus far in the football, and I know both the other
like
people
losing
on this
fight?
podcast
You mean
couldn't
losing
care less.
fights or?
No,
Fucking
on
cares.
the pitch.
Like what's the fight record?
There have been some amazing videos on social media. My favorite one that I've seen so far, which we'll be bringing to you, is actually not a fight. It is an entire crowd of people, probably like a couple thousand deep, and there is someone who is so sloshed that they've fallen asleep like that. And the game that people are playing is they put a pint glass on his head, and people all go, "Whoa," and like someone from the crowd walks in, tips a little bit of beer into the pint glass, and they see if he wakes up. And it's amazing. So like, that's been one of my favorites.
I mean, that's just awesome. We don't, American soccer, men's soccer doesn't have that spirit. It's all in football. Football stole it all. So I mean, that I think answers why the American men's soccer players just aren't competitive internationally.
But no, it's been great to see the hooliganism. There is one fan who took it too far. He was earlier in the tournament. I think he was walking around with like some sort of axe, and the German police just shot him. So
What?
If you're wondering where's the line, if you're new to soccer hooliganism and you're obviously new to this podcast, and you're looking for the kind of factual, hard-hitting journalism that we bring, the line in football hooliganism is don't walk around with an axe.
So, what happened to the guy? He got shot, and then what?
I mean, Chris, if you get shot in the head, you generally die.
Where did he get shot?
In the head.
Is this even...
No, it's a true story. It's like he's walking around with an axe, and I think he was there to do harm, not just a bit pissed up. And they shot him in the head.
Yeah.
And
Jesus.
honestly, I don't think anyone paused for more than about 5 minutes. They just carried on drinking.
In a move that's going to change zero minds, in air quotes, of the people who are just like balls deep in the whole MMTLP conspiracy theory world, the SEC formally filed an action against Meta Materials, so that's the MMTLP, and its former CEOs, this guy John Barta and George Palakaras or something like that. But anyway, I mean, this is just awesome because a few weeks ago, somebody after Roaring Kitty came back and went on YouTube, somebody from like that corner of Twitter tagged me, said something like, how is it manipulation for Roaring Kitty to talk about GameStop and at Muddy Waters Re and at Citron Research can slam stocks and that's not illegal. And so anyway, I engaged with these guys for a little bit, just saying, hey, you guys, like, what you believe in is total bullshit. And one of them hit me up by DM and asked me for proof. And I just gave him the link to this guy, Kayubiku. So he used to be on Twitter. I know who he is in real life. Very bright guy. And he's been extremely generous with his time in researching and publishing why it's impossible that there are synthetic shares, and Ken Griffin is, not actually like trying to keep this stock halted and all this shit. And so I said, well, look, this explains it better than I can. And the guy came right back to me LOL, he's been totally discredited. This is all wrong. This is all you got. And then there was like a Forbes cartoon article about, or Forbes like graphic piece about this a few months ago. They, of course, LOL, that's totally wrong. And so anyway, I just thought this would be great because, here's the SEC from the inside, having done this investigation, charging these dudes, and once again ratifying that everything that the MMTLP, like tinfoil hat crowd, believes is totally wrong. And guess what? They still think they're right, and they just think that Ken Griffin bought off the SEC.
We've done primary research on the insanity of these people. We actually had Roddy Boyd go... was it to Washington, D.C., where they were protesting?
Yeah, they organized this Occupy the SEC protest and got like 20 people to show up or something. Most of them were wearing weird costumes.
Yeah, there was Lady Justice. The whole vibe there was weird. I assume most of the males just couldn't get into the furry convention, so they're like, all right, this is nearby, I'll hit this up as well. Yeah, there's a lot of strange people out there. 20 of them showed up to protest this, and hundreds of others believe that MLTLP is not a scam, and this stuff is religion, honestly. Like, there's no amount of evidence to the contrary in any of it that's ever going to change anything for any of them. It is true religion. A Jerusalem court acquitted U.S. tourist Stephen Edward Porth of smashing historical statues at the Israel Museum, citing his mental state. Porth, suffering from Jerusalem syndrome, was sentenced to 4 years of involuntary hospitalization, equal to the maximum prison sentence for his offense. Despite causing $1 million in damage, Porth expressed no regret, claiming the statues were idolatrous and against his religious beliefs. Now, a lot of you are wondering why I'm interested in this and what the relevance this has to finance.
Yes.
But there is another trial going on at the moment, and that trial involves a man who has great belief in himself and devotion to God, and that man is Bill Hwang. And I am wondering at what point his, I'm sure, very well remunerated defense lawyer pulls out the Jerusalem syndrome defense and gets this fucker off. That's what I'm kind of hoping to see.
Now explain that. Like why is the Jerusalem syndrome defense relevant to this?
So the Jerusalem syndrome defense is relevant because apparently what you actually kind of claim is the presence of the divine makes you act in like a sort of a state of like not having any kind of control of yourself. It's kind of like an insanity plea. Bill Hwang, who I think turned his fund equity from $4 billion to about $36 billion, and amassed sounds like somewhere in the region of about $200 billion of exposure across his counterparties.
Yes, exposure is the right word for that.
Exposure across his counterparties. I don't know. We disagree on this. You think that the God thing's bullshit with him. I think anyone who actually is doing this like truly does believe they are some sort of like divine inspiration to trading or something.
Didn't ever occur to me beforehand, but so the stock that he most obviously manipulated was GSX, which of course we were quite short at the time. But as you were talking about this and the idolatry, it dawned on me that GSX could almost be like an abbreviation for Jesus Christ, because GS, if you're, especially if you're a little drunk and like slur it like Krista would, that almost sounds like Jesus. And then the X, like a lot of times people write Xmas instead of Christmas, right? So it's like maybe he saw, maybe this was like a sign, from the gods, and yeah, maybe like he saw the short sellers as heathens, and that, that was the whole thing, like squeeze them because they're shorting Jesus Christ.
This kind of makes sense.
Probably not that small a number of them were Jews. I mean, Andrew laughed, you, Freddy.
Yeah, it's the trial continues to amaze. The other awesome thing that's come out this week is kind of like a recap is just like the different approaches to risk management. So CS, I think the guy's on his city bike on the way in, and he's like, all right, let's kind of wind this down slowly. We've only got like the bank's tier 1 capital 3 times over worth of exposure. Let's hope we don't take a hit. Goldman are like, very Goldman, they're up on the trade because they like had some cash wired and then they just hit the bid really hard. Awesome anecdote out of Jeffries. Realized, they had some risk on the book. Well-known phrase, if you're going to eat dog shit, don't nibble it. So, the quote that was attributed to the CEO was, I want this off the book by the time I finish my my margarita. And, it honestly has been really interesting seeing how different banks dealt with not getting phone calls returned for margin calls. And things like people saying like, hey, we have a lot less equity than we thought we did. I think Mizuho said good luck.
They were totally asleep.
But it's yeah.
They so didn't get it.
It's been pretty interesting seeing the inside baseball on that. And look, Carson, you got your name up in lights. I mean, he literally name dropped, I think, was it Tamir the trader? Like name dropped that you're at the center of that guy's world. So I'm envisaging in the office 2 crosses on the wall. One with Jesus and the other with you, his Antichrist.
0 fucks given podcast.